Now, the locomotive that we have over here today dates from the Civil War. This is the latest one out of our shop, previously known as the 117 Thatcher Perkins. This is significant because, as many of you from Maryland know and will recall, 2003 our roof collapsed inside this roundhouse. The roof between bays 6 and 16 fell on the equipment. Pieces that are currently awaiting restoration are in bays 6 and 7, and that's what happens when thousands of pounds of slate, steel, and iron fall on top of a piece of equipment. This particular piece was significantly damaged as well. The cab had a giant hole through the center. The tin roofing that was on top was pushed through. The whistle, the bell, even the stack had severe damage. The handrails running the length of the running boards were severely bent. The running boards of this piece of wood right here that allowed people to walk along the locomotive, those were literally stemmed in half. Because this piece was so large and the extent of the damage to the roundhouse was so significant, the turntable could not be used. This particular piece sat in the roundhouse while the roof was built over top of it, further exposing it to damage from the elements, causing severe paint flaking and rusting. This was pulled out of the roundhouse in December of 2007. Sat in our shops for 2 years during this restoration work. The work allowed us to do some pretty significant work in restoring it to what this locomotive originally was. During our research, we discovered that basically this particular locomotive was originally numbered to 147. In 1884, it had a new boiler added. It was renumbered to 282. It was pulled out of service by the B&O to be used for public relation purposes in 1892. At that time, it was numbered 117, and that was a significant number because that was the first technical locomotive built by Thatcher Perkins, who was the B&O's master of machinery during the American Civil War. He designed this style. This was one of the second and third built by Perkins, so the 117 was the first. They figured it was significant enough that they would renumber it. And that's how it stayed up until 1926. 1926, the B&O was preparing for its 100th birthday party at the Faraday Iron Horse. At that time, they actually painted the name Thatcher Perkins on the side of the locomotive's cab. And that's how it was known, and that's how it was displayed by the B&O up until 2 years ago. I'd like to recognize some of our staff who participated in the restoration. I believe Mr. George Harwood is here. If you raise your hand, George. Big round of applause for George. George is our master metal worker, responsible for replacing and repairing many of the components and metal components that you see here. Mr. Zell Olson, who's not here, but please give him a round of applause too. He did a great job as well. Mr. Franks, go ahead 2 more times around. One of the things that we did find while we were restoring the locomotive is we found numbers on several components. The side rods and the eccentrics were stamped with different numbers for different locomotives. Some had the number 117, some had the number 282, and others 234. It's a common practice to stamp these rods prior to assembly so that you knew where they needed to go when you were putting it all back together. The color scheme and the livery that we decided on for this Perkins, for this locomotive, was something that the museum did not have, but is representative of the style that was used in the American Civil War and shortly after. The large numbers, easily viewable from a distance. The colors were bright, however not as bright as some of the earlier American locomotives had been. And this represents what I like to refer to as a transitional locomotive. The color schemes from the 1850s and before were very colorful. Lots of brass, highly colorful, very decorative. You would have seen landscape paintings on the cab as well as portrait paintings on the lantern. Many of those locomotives were actually wood burning. This particular locomotive is a coal burning locomotive. The big difference being that the steam given off by a wood burning locomotive doesn't leave as much dirt as what you see in coal burning. So this is not as ornate. It's a little bit more simplistic. And by 1884, 1885, the B&O wanted to paint its locomotives black. And that was for maintenance purposes as much as practical application. All right? You still turning? Big round of applause for Chris. This particular style locomotive was used by the Navy on the Allegheny Mountains. This was a powerful locomotive, heavy enough and powerful enough to use one of the steep grades of the Allegheny Mountains between Piedmont and Grafton in what's today West Virginia. This will go on display in the Roundhouse. And our new current project, if you're familiar with the 217 panel, that's currently in the shop, is going to be our next project. Once we secure the turntable in place, we will lock it down and invite you up to join us. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to help you. We want to thank you for visiting the B&O Railroad Museum. Tell your friends about us. And come on back and see us again. Thanks again.
We can start locking it down.